Rachel Summers clutched her coffee and design portfolio tightly as she hurried through the polished marble lobby of Sterling Tower, one of the tallest skyscrapers in downtown Seattle. Her heels clicked against the floor in a frantic rhythm. She was already late for her internship interview at Orion Corp, a company she had dreamed of working at ever since graduating from Parsons. The elevator doors loomed ahead, just starting to close. In a desperate move, Rachel sprinted forward. Her right foot caught a slick spot on the gleaming floor, and in an instant she lost her balance. Papers and coffee flew into the air like startled birds. Rachel reached out blindly, trying to steady herself, but instead her hand grabbed onto something. No, someone. There was a loud rip. Gasps echoed through the lobby. Rachel landed flat on her back, dazed and humiliated. Blinking up at the soaring ceiling, she realized two things at once. First, her skirt was bunched awkwardly around her thighs. Second, her hand still clutched the waistband of a man's impeccably tailored slacks, which were now pooled around his ankles. A horrified silence fell over the lobby. Mortified, Rachel scrambled to her feet, her face flaming red. She lifted her gaze to the man she had just publicly undressed. He stood tall, frozen in disbelief, his chiseled torso tense with shock. A blush crept up from the collar of his white dress shirt, which was now untucked and rumpled. He quickly pulled up his pants with stiff dignity, shooting Rachel a look that was somewhere between fury and complete mortification. "I am so sorry," Rachel blurted, her voice trembling. She tried to gather her scattered papers, her fingers fumbling. The man bent down silently to help her, his movements stiff and controlled. Around them, people whispered. A security guard coughed awkwardly into his hand. Rachel dared a glance at the man's face. His features were sharp and unforgettable. Strong jawline, dark brows furrowed, piercing gray eyes that could cut through steel. Something about him seemed incredibly familiar, but her mind was too scrambled to place it. Without another word, he shoved the last of her papers into her arms, straightened his jacket, and strode into the waiting elevator. The doors closed with a soft chime, sealing him away. Rachel stood there, mortified, coffee dripping from her sleeves, papers bent and soaked. She had never felt so humiliated in her life. The receptionist behind the marble counter cleared her throat delicately. "Miss Summers," she said, trying to hide a smile, "you might want to fix your skirt before you head to your interview." Rachel tugged at the fabric with shaking hands and offered a weak nod. As she turned toward the interview floor, she muttered under her breath, "There is no way this day can get any worse." But she had no idea that her day was just beginning, and she definitely had no idea that the man she had just accidentally pantsed was none other than Noah Sterling, the elusive CEO of Orion Corp himself, and he had not forgotten her. Not even close. Rachel wiped her damp palms on her skirt as she stepped into the elevator, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could not believe what had just happened. She had embarrassed herself in front of the entire lobby, and worst of all, in front of a man who looked like he could ruin her career with a single phone call. The elevator doors opened onto the 32nd floor, where Orion Corp's design department buzzed with quiet energy. Glass offices lined the hallway, and assistants darted between desks carrying portfolios and coffee trays. Rachel approached the reception desk, trying to compose herself. A young woman with a sleek ponytail glanced up from her computer. "Name?" she asked briskly. "Rachel Summers," Rachel whispered. The receptionist typed quickly and then looked up with a tight smile. "Mr. Sterling will see you now. Second door on the right." Rachel blinked. She had expected to meet with the human resources team, or maybe a junior manager, not the head of the entire corporation. Her stomach twisted into knots. Maybe it was a mistake. Gathering her courage, Rachel walked down the hall and tapped lightly on the door before pushing it open. Her heart plummeted to her shoes. There, seated behind a massive glass desk, was the man she had accidentally humiliated 15 minutes earlier, Noah Sterling. He looked up from a file, his expression unreadable. His gray eyes flickered with recognition, but his face remained calm, almost detached. Rachel froze in the doorway, her throat dry. "You are Rachel Summers," he said. It was not a question. She nodded dumbly. "Come in," he said, his voice even. "Close the door." Rachel obeyed, her hands trembling so badly she almost dropped her portfolio again. She perched on the edge of the chair opposite his desk, feeling like she was sitting in front of a judge and jury. For a moment, Noah just studied her. Rachel squirmed under his gaze, wishing she could melt into the floor. "You are applying for the junior designer position," he said finally. "Yes, sir," she managed to say. Noah opened her portfolio, flipping through the pages with slow, deliberate movements. Rachel watched, her stomach tying itself into tighter and tighter knots. After what felt like an eternity, he closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "You are talented," he said, his voice giving nothing away. Rachel blinked. She had braced herself for mockery or immediate rejection, not a compliment. "Thank you, sir," she said cautiously. "But," he continued, steepling his fingers under his chin, "we value professionalism at Orion Corp." Rachel's face burned hotter. She wanted to sink into the floor and disappear. "I am deeply sorry about what happened downstairs," she burst out, unable to hold it in any longer. "It was an accident. I swear I would never intentionally—" He held up a hand, silencing her. "I know," he said simply. Rachel's mouth snapped shut, surprised. Noah's lips twitched almost imperceptibly, like he was fighting a smile. "Accidents happen," he said, "especially when the floors are polished to a mirror finish." Rachel let out a shaky breath. Not sure if he was mocking her or letting her off the hook, he pushed the portfolio toward her. "You will start Monday," he said. Rachel's jaw dropped. I got the job?" Noah nodded once. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking with relief. "Thank you so much." "Do not thank me yet," he said, a glint of something unreadable in his eyes. "You will be reporting directly to me." Rachel blinked. "Directly? Is that a problem?" he asked. "No, sir," she said quickly, her heart racing for reasons she could not explain. "Good," he said, standing. He extended his hand. Rachel rose, reaching out to shake it. Their hands met, and a jolt of awareness shot through her. Noah's grip was firm, his hand warm. His gray eyes held hers for a beat longer than necessary. "I look forward to working with you," he said. Rachel nodded, unable to find her voice. She turned and walked out of his office, her legs barely supporting her. As the door closed behind her, Noah Sterling allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The girl who had literally stripped him in the lobby was now going to be under his watchful eye, and he had a feeling life at Orion Corp was about to get a lot more interesting. Rachel spent the entire weekend oscillating between excitement and pure panic. Monday morning arrived far too soon, and she found herself standing in front of the Orion Corp skyscraper, her heart thudding heavily in her chest. She smoothed her navy skirt, adjusted her simple white blouse, and took a deep breath before stepping inside. The receptionist gave her a polite nod, already expecting her. "Take the elevator to the 32nd floor. Mr. Sterling's assistant will meet you." Rachel murmured a thank you and made her way to the elevators. As she waited, she caught her reflection in the polished metal doors and winced. No matter how neat she looked, she still felt like an imposter walking into a world where she did not belong. The elevator chimed and Rachel stepped in. When she arrived, a young woman with stylish glasses and a sharp blazer approached. "Miss Summers, I am Claire, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant," she said briskly. "Follow me." Rachel trailed behind her through a maze of glass offices and open workspaces. Every step echoed on the marble floors, and she swore every pair of eyes turned to watch the newcomer. Claire led her to a sleek workstation just outside a large office with double doors. "You will be stationed here. Mr. Sterling will give you your first assignment shortly." Rachel nodded, her throat too dry to speak. Before she could even sit down, the office doors swung open, and Noah Sterling himself appeared. Rachel stiffened. Today, he wore a dark gray suit, perfectly tailored, with a black tie that made him look every bit as intimidating as he had during their disastrous first meeting. He gave her a curt nod. "Miss Summers, inside." Rachel followed him into his office, her heart hammering. He gestured toward a chair in front of his desk while he remained standing, flipping through a thin file. "I need you to prepare the design concepts for the upcoming spring line," he said. "Preliminary sketches. Fresh, innovative, something that reflects the new brand direction." Rachel blinked. That was a senior designer's job, not an entry-level assistant's. "Sir?" she said hesitantly. "Are you sure?" He looked up sharply, and she snapped her mouth shut. "I trust my instincts," he said simply, "and I trust that you are capable. Do not disappoint me." Rachel swallowed hard and nodded. Noah handed her a slim folder filled with vague guidelines. "You have until Friday." Rachel took the file with both hands, feeling its weight like a physical thing. As she turned to leave, she almost collided with him, not realizing he had stepped closer. Their eyes locked. Rachel felt the world narrow to just the two of them. His gaze was cool, assessing. But there was something else buried beneath the surface, something warmer, something dangerous. She stumbled back a step, clutching the file like a shield. "Careful," Noah said, his voice lower, almost amused. Rachel bolted from the office, her cheeks burning. At her desk, she threw herself into the project, sketching ideas furiously. She barely noticed the hours slipping away. Throughout the week, Noah appeared unpredictably, sometimes standing behind her without warning, sometimes leaning over her shoulder to examine her work, his cologne subtle but maddeningly distracting. Each time, Rachel struggled to stay composed, pretending that the memory of their first encounter was not etched permanently into her mind. On Wednesday afternoon, disaster struck again. Rachel was hurrying toward the break room with a stack of fabric samples in her arms when she collided headfirst into a solid wall. Except it was not a wall. It was Noah. The samples flew into the air, fluttering down like colorful snow. Rachel gasped, dropping to her knees to gather them, mortified. Noah crouched down beside her, his large hand brushing against hers as he picked up a swatch of deep burgundy silk. Their fingers touched for a fraction of a second, but Rachel felt it like an electric shock. "Miss Summers," he said, his voice low and steady, "you seem determined to run me over." "I am so sorry," she stammered, clutching the samples to her chest like armor. Noah stood, offering her a hand. Rachel hesitated a second too long before taking it. He pulled her up effortlessly, holding her hand a beat longer than necessary before releasing it. Their eyes met again, and this time something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of humor, a flash of heat. Rachel stepped back quickly, her heart racing. "Focus," she muttered under her breath once she was safely back at her desk. "Focus on the work." But it was not easy. Not when her boss looked at her like that. She felt a gravitational pull every time he was near. Rachel knew one thing for sure. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, Noah Sterling was becoming impossible to ignore. And deep down, a small reckless part of her wondered if maybe he felt the same way. Friday evening arrived far too quickly. Rachel sat at her desk, staring at the final sketches laid out before her. Every line, every color choice had been agonized over. She had poured her soul into these designs, desperate to prove she belonged. The office was nearly empty now, the usual bustle of Orion Corp fading into a rare, fragile silence. Rachel hesitated for a long moment before gathering her sketches and walking to Noah's office. The door was half open. She knocked lightly. "Come in," his voice called from inside. Rachel stepped through and found him seated behind his massive mahogany desk, his jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up, a few buttons undone at his collar. He looked tired, his hair slightly disheveled, but still every inch the man who had taken over her thoughts. Without a word, she handed him the portfolio. Noah leaned back in his chair, flipping through the sketches. The silence stretched unbearably. Rachel shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her palms sweating. Finally, Noah set the folder down. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. Rachel obeyed, her heart hammering. He steepled his fingers, studying her. "These are good," he said slowly. "Better than I expected." Relief surged through her so suddenly she almost sagged in her seat. "But," Noah continued, his eyes narrowing slightly, "they are safe." Rachel blinked. "Safe?" "You have talent, Miss Summers," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Real talent. But you are still coloring inside the lines. I want to see what happens when you step beyond them." Rachel bit her lip. I can do better." "I know you can," Noah said, his gaze never wavering, "which is why you are staying." She stared at him, confused. "Tonight," he added, "you and I are going to rework these. Together." Rachel's mouth went dry. "Tonight?" Noah leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. "Unless you have somewhere else to be?" Rachel thought of her empty apartment, the frozen dinners waiting in her fridge, the silence that always felt heavier on weekends. She straightened her shoulders. "No, I am staying." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, and for a fleeting second he looked almost boyish. "Good," he said. "Let's get started." The hours slipped by unnoticed. They worked side by side, bouncing ideas back and forth. Noel pushed her to take risks, to loosen her grip on perfection. He was demanding but fair, and surprisingly patient when Rachel hesitated or second-guessed herself. At some point he ordered takeout and they ate Chinese food from cartons on his office floor, their sketches spread out between them. Rachel found herself laughing at one of his dry jokes, surprised by how easy it felt. It was a different side of him, less CEO, more man. As midnight approached, they took a break. Rachel stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the glittering city below. Her reflection merged with the lights, a ghostly silhouette against the glass. Noah joined her, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. He handed her one without a word. For a moment, they simply stood there, sipping in silence, the vastness of the city wrapping around them like a secret. Rachel dared a glance at him. He was closer than she realized. Too close. Her breath caught. Noah turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "You surprise me," he said softly. Rachel blinked. "How?" "You are stronger than you think," he said. "Most people would have crumbled after our first meeting." Rachel chuckled weakly. "Most people do not accidentally pull their CEO's pants down." A rare, genuine laugh rumbled from his chest, and Rachel found herself smiling despite her embarrassment. Noah stepped closer, and her smile faltered. The air between them shifted. He lifted a hand, hesitated, then brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers barely grazed her skin, but Rachel felt it everywhere. "I have not been able to stop thinking about you," he admitted, his voice rougher now, raw. Rachel's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "This is crazy," she whispered, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "Maybe," Noah said, his hand dropping to his side, his jaw tightening. "But it is real." Rachel searched his face, looking for doubt, hesitation. She found none. Just him. Just them. The city stretched endlessly behind them, but in that moment, it felt like they were the only 2 people in the world. Rachel took a shaky breath. "I should probably go home," she said, her voice barely audible. "You could," Noah said, stepping back to give her space. His eyes stayed on hers, unwavering. "Or you could stay. We can finish the designs." Rachel hesitated, torn between caution and something wilder, something reckless that whispered to her heart. Finally, she nodded. "I will stay." Noah smiled, a slow, breathtaking smile that made Rachel's knees go weak. They turned back to the sketches, but the tension between them simmered, undeniable, alive. The night was far from over, and Rachel knew, deep in her bones, that nothing between them would ever be simple again. Monday morning came with a storm of whispers. Rachel stepped into Orion Corp's sleek lobby, her heart still buoyed by the memory of the long night spent with Noah, sketching, laughing, and sharing coffee under the glow of city lights. But the moment she crossed the marble floor, she felt it. The stairs. the sudden hush that followed her, the clipped murmurs just out of earshot. Her stomach twisted uneasily. At first, she tried to ignore it, focusing on the sketches tucked safely in her portfolio, but as she made her way toward the elevators, the tension thickened. She caught snippets of conversation. Did you hear her? Of all people, unbelievable. Rachel's pulse quickened. When she reached her floor, it only worsened. Conversations halted the moment she entered. Co-workers glanced away hurriedly, pretending to be busy. Even Claire, the usually friendly receptionist, gave her a tight, forced smile. Rachel hurried to her desk, her cheeks burning. She barely had time to put down her bag when Isabel appeared, leaning against the partition wall with a sly grin. "Looks like someone moved up the ladder overnight," Isabel said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Rachel stiffened. "What are you talking about?" Isabel leaned in closer. "Word is, you and the big boss were having a very intimate late-night meeting. Not very professional, is it?" Rachel's hands clenched into fists. "Nothing happened," she said sharply. "We were working." Isabel smirked. "Sure you were." With a final glance full of faux pity, she sauntered away, leaving Rachel trembling with a mix of anger and fear. Rachel sank into her chair, struggling to steady her breathing. How did they know? Had someone seen them? Or was it just office gossip spun wildly out of control? She reached for her phone, her fingers hesitating over Noah's number. No, she could not involve him. Not now. Not when she had worked so hard to prove herself. Rachel forced herself to focus on her work, but the whispers followed her everywhere. By noon, the rumors had taken on a life of their own. According to the grapevine, Rachel had seduced Noah Bennett to secure a promotion. Some claimed they had been caught together in his office. Others insisted she had been seen leaving his penthouse. Each lie gnawed at her carefully built reputation. When the department meeting was called that afternoon, Rachel walked into the conference room with her head high, despite the knot in her stomach. Noah was already there, standing at the head of the table, reviewing notes. He looked up as she entered, their eyes locking for a brief second. Rachel saw the flicker of concern in his gaze. He knew. He must have heard. The meeting began, but Rachel barely registered the discussion about project timelines and client pitches. Every word was a blur, every chuckle and sideways glance a dagger to her chest. Finally, Noah spoke. "I have a few announcements," he said, his voice calm, authoritative. "First, congratulations to Rachel Summers. Her designs for the upcoming collection have been selected to lead our launch campaign." A few murmurs rose from the table. Rachel felt every eye on her, some surprised, others resentful. Noah continued unbothered. "Her work is exceptional. She earned this." The words should have felt like a triumph. Instead, they landed heavily, feeding the fire of gossip already raging around her. Rachel kept her face neutral, but inside a storm raged. The meeting ended and people filed out. Rachel remained seated, gathering her notes slowly, giving the others time to leave first. Noah approached quietly. "Rachel," he said, his voice low. She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Do you want to talk?" he asked. Rachel hesitated, then shook her head. "Not here." He nodded once, understanding. "Later," he said. She nodded back. "Later." For now she had to survive the day. Rachel returned to her desk, ignoring the whispers, the stares, the not-so-subtle looks from Isabel and her cronies. She buried herself in her work, clinging to the only thing she could control. But deep down, she knew the real battle was just beginning, because in a world where appearances were everything, a single rumor could destroy everything she had fought for, and Rachel Summers was not ready to lose. Not yet. Not ever. The rest of the afternoon crawled by like a bad dream. Rachel kept her head down, eyes glued to her sketches, though her mind raced endlessly. Every time she heard footsteps approaching or hushed voices whispering nearby, her heart jumped painfully. When 5 o'clock finally came, she packed her things slowly, dreading the walk to the elevator. As she stepped into the marble lobby, she felt the familiar prickle of eyes on her back. Isabel stood with a small group near the front doors, their laughter sharp and cutting. Rachel's fists clenched at her sides. She was tired of being mocked, misunderstood, and judged for things that had nothing to do with her talent or worth. She walked past them without a word, keeping her head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Outside, the cool evening air hit her face, sharp and bracing. Rachel breathed deeply, trying to clear the fog of humiliation and anger clouding her mind. She was halfway down the block when she heard a voice calling after her. "Rachel, wait!" She turned to see Noah jogging to catch up, his tailored coat flaring behind him, his face serious, determined. "I am not letting this continue," he said as he reached her, falling into step beside her. "We need to clear this up." Rachel shook her head, frustration boiling over. "It does not matter," she said bitterly. "They already made up their minds." Noah stopped, making her halt too. "It does matter," he said quietly. "I will not let them destroy your reputation because of me." Rachel looked away, her throat tightening. "What can we even do?" she whispered. "Talk," he said simply. "Be honest." Rachel laughed without humor. "Honesty does not work with people like Isabel. They believe what they want to believe." Noah smiled faintly, a glint of challenge in his eyes. "Then we will make them believe something else." Before she could ask what he meant, he was already pulling out his phone. The next morning, Rachel arrived at Orion Corp earlier than usual, dreading another day of silent judgment. But as she stepped into the lobby, she froze. A sleek digital screen mounted on the wall flashed a new announcement. "Today, 9 a.m., main conference room, company-wide meeting. Mandatory attendance." Her stomach twisted. She had no idea what was happening, but the tension in the air was palpable. Employees murmured among themselves, exchanging curious glances. Rachel rode the elevator up with a knot in her chest. When she reached the main conference room, it was already filling up. Noah stood at the front, his expression unreadable as he spoke in low tones with two senior executives. When everyone had settled, he stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I called this meeting," Noah began, his voice firm, cutting through the low buzz of conversation, "because a serious issue has been brought to my attention." The room fell into a hushed silence. "Over the past few days," he continued, "certain rumors have circulated regarding an alleged inappropriate relationship between myself and one of our employees." Rachel sat frozen, every eye in the room swinging toward her, her heart hammering in her chest. Noah's gaze found hers for a brief moment, steady and reassuring. Then he turned back to the crowd. "I want to make one thing absolutely clear," he said, his tone brooking no argument. Rachel Summers earned her place here through hard work, creativity, and dedication. The designs she created for our upcoming collection are among the finest we have ever produced. Any suggestion otherwise is not only false, it is an insult to the standards we hold at Orion Corp. A ripple of shock ran through the room. Isabel shifted uncomfortably, her smirk fading. Noah continued. "Furthermore, I want to address the source of these rumors." He glanced at a folder in his hand, then at Isabel, who visibly paled. "An internal review has traced the initiation of these rumors back to a specific group of individuals. Actions like these are not only unethical, they are grounds for termination." The air seemed to crackle. Isabel opened her mouth, perhaps to deny or protest, but Noah cut her off with a look. "We foster an environment of respect and merit, not one of gossip and sabotage," he said. "Effective immediately, disciplinary action will be taken against those responsible." He closed the folder with a soft but final snap. "This conversation is over. Let us get back to doing what we do best, creating brilliance." For a few seconds, no one moved. Then slowly, people began to stir, whispers breaking out, not cruel this time, but awed, admiring. Rachel sat stunned, warmth creeping into her frozen limbs. Noah had just staked his reputation to defend hers, publicly and without hesitation. As the meeting broke up, people passed her without the same hostile glances as before. A few even nodded at her respectfully, as if finally seeing her for the first time. Rachel gathered her things slowly, still dazed. Noah approached, his expression softer now, "Are you all right?" he asked under his breath. Rachel looked up at him, emotions surging through her, gratitude, relief, disbelief. "You did not have to do that," she whispered. He smiled a little. "Yes, I did," he said. "Because you deserve better than to be torn down by cowards." Rachel bit her lip, blinking back sudden tears. "Thank you," she said simply. Noah's gaze softened further. "This is not just about work, Rachel," he said. "You matter, you always have." She felt her cheeks flush, the room spinning slightly. She opened her mouth to reply, but Noah simply smiled and added, "Later, come to my office when you are ready. We have more to discuss." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Rachel standing amid the scattered chairs, her heart pounding in a completely different rhythm than before. Outside, the morning sun finally broke through the clouds, casting long beams of light through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and for the first time in a long time, Rachel felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later that afternoon, Rachel stood in front of Noah's office door, heart thudding painfully against her ribs. She knocked softly, and his voice called out, "Come in." She entered to find him seated behind his wide mahogany desk, papers neatly stacked to one side. He looked up immediately, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You made it." Rachel stepped inside, closing the door carefully behind her. She crossed the plush carpet, feeling slightly out of place in her simple dress and scuffed heels. Noah gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit, please." She obeyed, clutching her hands in her lap to hide their nervous tremble. "I meant it when I said we needed to talk," Noah began, his tone serious, but not unkind. "There are some things you should know." Rachel tilted her head slightly, curiosity mingling with apprehension. Noah leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "I was not supposed to meet you the way we did," he said, "the day you tripped in the lobby. That was not our first near encounter." Rachel blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. Noah gave a small chuckle, almost self-deprecating. "Months ago I saw your portfolio. Your designs were mixed into a batch submitted for an internship program. Even though you had applied for an entry-level position, your work stood out. Bold, unique." Rachel's mouth fell open slightly. I did not know," she stammered. Noah nodded. "You were supposed to be fast-tracked, but somewhere along the way someone blocked it. Likely Margaret Hayes, jealous of anyone with more talent than herself." Rachel's stomach turned at the memory of her former manager's constant nitpicking and veiled insults. "I kept tabs on you after that," Noah admitted, his voice quiet, not in a creepy way, but because I could not understand why someone with your skill was being pushed into the background. Rachel swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the revelation. "Why are you telling me this now?" she whispered. Noah's hazel eyes met hers, unwavering. "Because I believe you deserve honesty, and because I care about you, more than I probably should." The words hung heavy between them, filled with a tenderness Rachel had not expected. Before she could gather her thoughts, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Noah's brow furrowed in annoyance, but he called out, "Come in!" The door opened and a woman stepped inside, tall, severe, her dark hair pinned tightly back. Rachel recognized her instantly. Amelia Cross, head of the board of directors, and known for her ruthless pursuit of company image. Amelia's cold eye swept over Rachel before settling on Noah. "We have a problem," she said curtly. Noah stood immediately. "What is it?" he asked, tension radiating from his frame. Amelia flicked a disdainful glance at Rachel before answering. "There are rumors outside the company now, tabloids sniffing around, something about a scandal between the CEO and a junior employee." Rachel's heart dropped to her stomach. Noah's jaw clenched. "We handled it internally," he said sharply. "There is nothing for them to find." Amelia raised a skeptical brow. "Be that as it may, perception matters. Investors are nervous, we have to be careful." She turned and left without another word, leaving a heavy silence behind. Rachel rose to her feet, hugging her arms around herself. Maybe I should leave," she said in a small voice. Noah crossed the room in 2 strides, standing close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "No," he said firmly, "you should not have to sacrifice everything because of their narrow minds." Rachel looked up at him, searching his face for some hint of doubt, but found none. "Besides," he added more gently, "you are not alone in this." A lump formed in Rachel's throat. She had fought alone for so long she had almost forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside her. Still, doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. "But what if they never accept me?" she whispered. Noah smiled faintly, lifting her hand to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Then we build our own world, one where they do not matter." Rachel blinked back tears, nodding slowly, a fragile hope taking root inside her chest. Just then, her phone buzzed sharply. She pulled it from her pocket and frowned at the unknown number flashing across the screen. Answering cautiously, she listened for a moment, her face paling. "Rachel Summers," a cold voice sneered. "You think you have won, but you have no idea what is coming." The line went dead. She stared at the phone, dread coiling in her gut. Noah caught the look on her face immediately. "What is it?" he asked. Rachel shook her head, voice trembling. "I think someone is trying to ruin me." Noah's eyes darkened with a stormy fury she had never seen before. "Let them try," he said quietly. "We will be ready." Rachel clutched the phone tightly, knowing deep in her heart that the road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, she would not be walking it alone. Over the next few days, Rachel and Noah worked quietly behind the scenes, moving like pieces on a chessboard, gathering allies, planning their defense. They knew the vague threat on the phone was not empty. Whoever was behind it had resources and the ability to stir trouble from the shadows. Noah called in his trusted legal team, a small but fierce group led by Sophia Kane, a brilliant lawyer known for her no-nonsense attitude. Sophia met Rachel in Noah's office one morning, shaking her hand firmly and giving a sharp nod. "I have dealt with worse scandals," she said bluntly. "We will be fine, as long as we stay ahead of it." Meanwhile, Rachel found herself watched more closely by coworkers. Whispers followed her through the halls, snide comments disguised as jokes hung in the air. Every move she made felt scrutinized, every smile or glance at Noah dissected by curious eyes. It was exhausting, but Rachel gritted her teeth and pushed through it, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. Noah arranged a discreet meeting with the board of directors. Aiming to preempt any attempts at forcing him out, they met in a private conference room high above the city, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a sprawling view of New York below. Rachel was not present. At Noah's insistence, this was his battle to fight. Amelia Cross stood at the head of the long glass table, flanked by a few allies, her sharp gaze flickering over Noah as he entered, calm and composed in a navy suit. "We all know why we are here," Amelia began, her voice cutting through the murmured greetings. "The media storm is brewing, and we cannot afford to be caught off guard." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Noah, your relationship with Miss Summers, if it continues, could damage our reputation irreparably." Noah clasped his hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. "There is no inappropriate relationship," he said evenly. "Rachel Summers earned her position through talent and hard work, not favoritism." One of the older board members, Mr. Anderson, cleared his throat. "Still, public perception is a fragile thing," he said. "Investors scare easily." Noah nodded slowly, "Which is why I am taking action." He slid a file onto the table. "Starting today, Rachel Summers is launching a new design division, independently funded, but under our umbrella." Murmurs broke out around the room. "She will head it herself, separate from my direct authority, no conflicts of interest." Amelia's eyes narrowed, but she could not argue. Noah had outmaneuvered her, providing a solution that addressed their concerns while protecting Rachel's career. "We will monitor the progress closely," she said stiffly. Noah inclined his head, hiding his satisfaction. He had bought Rachel time and space to breathe. Back at the design floor, Rachel was oblivious to the deal being brokered above her. She spent her hours pouring herself into sketches, creating an entire vision for the new division she would soon lead. Bold colors, innovative silhouettes, collections that spoke of resilience and transformation. It was the work of a woman who had been broken and rebuilt stronger than before. One evening, Rachel stayed late, the office nearly deserted. She was bent over a drafting table when a sharp click echoed behind her. She turned to see Isabel Ward, the designer who had always seen Rachel as a threat, standing in the doorway, a thin smile playing on her lips, burning the midnight oil. Isabel said sweetly. Rachel stiffened, wary. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. Isabel sauntered closer, a folder tucked under her arm. "Just thought you might want to see what the media will be printing tomorrow." She tossed the folder onto the table, papers spilling out. Rachel's breath caught as she flipped through them, blurry photos taken out of context, one of her stepping into Noah's car, another where he placed a hand lightly on her back, comforting her during a tense moment. Captions twisted the truth into something scandalous, spinning a story of an illicit affair and corporate favoritism. "They are going to eat you alive," Isabel said, feigning sympathy. "Might be easier if you just resign quietly, save Noah the embarrassment." Rachel's hands trembled as she gathered the photos, her mind racing, but she forced herself to meet Isabel's smug gaze. "You forget," she said steadily. "I do not scare that easily." Isabel's smile faltered. Rachel watched her turn on her heel and stalk away, leaving the stink of bitterness behind. Rachel packed up the damning papers and headed straight to Noah's office, finding him poring over contracts. He looked up immediately, concern flashing in his eyes. Without a word, she handed him the folder, watching his face darken as he sifted through the images. "They are coming for both of us," she said softly. Noah closed the folder and set it aside, rising to his feet. "Then we fight," he said simply. He cupped her face gently. "No more hiding, no more running." Rachel leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. "I am scared," she whispered. Noah's eyes softened. "So am I," he admitted. "But I would rather face it with you than walk away." Rachel nodded, a fierce determination kindling inside her. The next morning, they launched their counterattack, a carefully orchestrated press conference, not to deny or apologize, but to tell the truth. Rachel stood beside Noah on the steps of Reed Enterprises, microphones thrust toward them, cameras flashing. She wore a sleek black dress, minimal makeup, her expression calm but resolute. Noah spoke first, his voice firm and clear. "There has been a lot of speculation regarding my relationship with Miss Summers," he said. "Let me make it perfectly clear. She earned her position through hard work and innovation. Any personal feelings that developed later were secondary and did not influence her career path. We stand by her talent and her integrity." Rachel stepped forward, her heart hammering in her chest, but she forced herself to speak. "I am proud of the work I have done here," she said, "and I will not let lies or rumors diminish it. I believe in this company, and I believe in building a future based on truth and merit, not gossip and fear." The crowd buzzed with whispered reactions, but as Rachel and Noah turned and walked back into the building, arm in arm, a few people started clapping, the sound small but growing. Inside, safe from the storm for the moment, Rachel let out a shaky breath. Noah squeezed her hand gently. "No matter what comes next," he said, "we face it together." Rachel nodded, her heart swelling with hope and resolve. They had drawn their battle lines, and they would not back down. In the days following the press conference, the city buzzed with divided opinions. Some believed in Rachel and Noah's integrity, admiring their bravery for facing the media storm head-on. Others latched onto the scandal, spreading half-truths and fueling speculation in endless social media threads. Rachel tried to focus on her work, pouring her heart into the first official collection of the new division she now headed. Each sketch, each stitch felt like defiance, a declaration that no whisper could break her. But behind the scenes, A darker current stirred. Amelia Cross and her allies, furious that their smear campaign had not succeeded, shifted tactics. They could not topple Noah publicly without risking the company's reputation, so they moved silently, whispering doubts into the ears of key investors, feeding stories of reckless leadership and favoritism that threatened to destabilize Reed Enterprises from within. Noah knew something was brewing. Meetings grew tense, board members asked sharper questions, and several lucrative contracts mysteriously stalled without warning. One afternoon, while reviewing the financial reports, Noah found a discrepancy that made his stomach drop. Someone had been manipulating figures, subtly siphoning funds from the company's charitable branch, creating a paper trail that could be tied back to him if anyone looked closely enough. Sophia Kane confirmed his fears after a tense late-night call. "They are framing you," she said bluntly, her voice cold with anger. "They want to paint you as corrupt, to force you out before the spring shareholder meeting." Noah stood by the window of his penthouse, the city lights blurring into streaks against the glass. His mind raced through possibilities, calculations. He could fight it openly and risk dragging Rachel further into the scandal, or he could step down quietly and protect her but lose everything he had built. The thought of surrender tasted like ash. Noah turned as Rachel entered the room, still in her work clothes, tired but radiant. She paused at the sight of his expression, her brow furrowing in concern. "What happened?" she asked softly. Noah crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms, breathing in the familiar, steadying scent of her hair. "They are trying to destroy everything," he murmured against her temple. "Not just me, but the future we are building." Rachel leaned back, searching his face. "Then we fight smarter," she said, her voice firm. "You taught me that." Noah smiled faintly, pride and love swelling in his chest. "You are incredible," he said, brushing a kiss against her forehead. Together they plotted their next move, piecing together alliances, gathering evidence to expose Amelia and her co-conspirators before the shareholders could be swayed by lies. Meanwhile, tensions escalated in the office. Rachel faced daily microaggressions, icy glares, whispered insults that tested her composure. Isabel Ward, emboldened by Amelia's scheming, grew bolder in her attempts to sabotage Rachel's work. One afternoon, Rachel found the final samples for her collection slashed and ruined, delicate fabrics shredded beyond repair. Her heart clenched at the sight, but she refused to crumble. She documented everything, photographing the damage, and filed an official report with HR, though she knew Amelia's allies would try to bury it. That night, Rachel met with Noah and Sophia, presenting her evidence. Sophia leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes gleaming. "We can use this," she said. "It proves a hostile environment, and it will cast doubt on any accusations they try to level against you later." Noah reached across the table, squeezing Rachel's hand. "I am so proud of you," he said quietly. "You are stronger than they will ever understand." But the next blow came swiftly and viciously. An anonymous tip reached a major business news outlet, claiming that Rachel had been paid off to keep silent about an alleged affair with Noah. The article, splashed across headlines the next morning, was brutal, filled with innuendo and unverified claims that painted Rachel as a gold digger and Noah as a manipulative boss. Rachel sat frozen at her desk, the world tilting around her as she read the words. Her hands shook, rage and humiliation churning in her gut. She wanted to scream, to cry, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, to think. Noah found her moments later, his face a thundercloud. Without a word, he pulled her to her feet and led her to his office, slamming the door behind them. "We sue," he said, his voice vibrating with fury. "We go after every last one of them." Rachel shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "That is exactly what they want," she whispered. "They want to drag us into a public war, to make us look unstable and reckless." Noah cursed under his breath, pacing the room like a caged animal. Rachel watched him, her heart breaking for the man who had given her everything and now stood on the brink of losing it all. Sophia arrived minutes later, calm and composed as always. "We need to be strategic," she said. "We gather evidence. We expose them methodically, not emotionally." Noah nodded stiffly, his hands clenched into fists. Rachel crossed the room and placed a hand on his arm. "We will get through this," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. "Together." That night, they worked late into the evening, reviewing documents, tracing financial transactions, identifying weak links among Amelia's allies. It was exhausting, soul-draining work, but neither of them faltered. They had come too far to give up now. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Rachel sat back in her chair, exhaustion weighing heavily on her limbs. Noah moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders and pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you," he murmured. Rachel leaned into him, drawing strength from his warmth. "We are not finished yet," she whispered. Noah smiled against her hair, a fierce, determined smile. "No," he said, "we are just getting started." Outside, the city stirred awake, oblivious to the silent war waging in the glass towers above. But inside Reed Enterprises, two hearts beat in unison, ready to fight for the future they believed in. The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived with a heavy, charged atmosphere. Reed Enterprises' grand auditorium, usually a place for innovation showcases and corporate celebrations, now buzzed with tension and thinly veiled hostility. Rows of investors, board members, and executives filled the seats, their faces a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and barely hidden glee at the anticipated showdown. Rachel stood backstage, her palms slick with sweat, despite the steady rise and fall of her breathing. She wore a sleek, tailored navy suit, her hair pinned back in a simple chignon, projecting calm strength. Noah stood beside her, adjusting his cufflinks with methodical precision, but his jaw was tight, his green eyes steely with determination. Sophia Kane approached them, her expression grim but confident. "Everything is in place," she said in a low voice. "We have the real financial records, the security footage showing Isabel sabotaging the samples, and testimony from several key employees willing to speak out about Amelia's intimidation tactics." Rachel nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for the people who had quietly chosen truth over politics. Noah slipped his hand into hers, squeezing once. "Whatever happens in there," he said, his voice low but steady, "we walk out together." A staff member gave the signal, and Noah squared his shoulders, leading Rachel onto the stage. A murmur ran through the crowd as the two of them took their places. At the center of the front row, Amelia Cross sat with an icy smile, flanked by several board members she had swayed to her side. Isabel Ward perched beside her, her smug expression barely concealed. The chairman, an elderly man with a booming voice, opened the proceedings with routine announcements, but the undercurrent of tension was palpable. When he finally handed the microphone to Noah, the room seemed to lean forward as one. Noah stepped up, his voice calm and commanding. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "Today, we are not just discussing numbers and projections. We are defending the integrity of Reed Enterprises." He spoke plainly, methodically, outlining the achievements of the past year, the record growth, the new charitable initiative spearheaded by Rachel's division. Then, without hesitation, he pivoted to the allegations. The room stiffened as he detailed the attacks against his character and the company's reputation. Rachel watched as Noah pulled up slides on the massive screen behind them, presenting clear, irrefutable evidence. Bank records, security footage, internal emails, all pointing to a coordinated effort to frame him and discredit Rachel. Gasps echoed through the hall as faces paled and heads turned toward Amelia. Amelia rose to her feet, her voice shrill. "This is a distraction," she snapped. "He is trying to cover his misconduct by blaming others." Sophia, seated discreetly near the stage, stood and cleared her throat, drawing attention. "Miss Cross," she said, holding up a thick folder, This folder contains notarized statements from employees you threatened and blackmailed, and legal authorities are very interested in these documents. The board members murmured among themselves, a ripple of unease passing through the crowd. Amelia's face flushed with anger and fear. Noah continued without missing a beat. "Integrity is not about avoiding mistakes," he said, his voice rising slightly. "It is about taking responsibility and standing up when it matters most. I have made my mistakes, but I have always acted with the company's best interest at heart. Can the same be said for those who plotted behind closed doors?" Rachel stepped forward then, her voice steady. "I stand with Mr. Reed, not because I owe him anything, but because truth matters, trust matters, and Reed Enterprises deserves leadership that reflects that." The chairman leaned forward, clearing his throat. "Given the evidence presented," he said gravely, "I move for an immediate vote of no confidence against Amelia Cross and her collaborators." The vote was swift and brutal. Amelia and Isabel were officially removed from their positions, escorted from the building under the stunned gaze of the shareholders. As the doors closed behind them, Noah turned to Rachel, a smile breaking through the tension. The crowd erupted into applause, some polite, some genuinely relieved. Reed Enterprises had survived its storm. Later, after the meeting, as the adrenaline faded, Rachel found herself standing on the balcony of the building, overlooking the city she had once thought too big, too intimidating. Noah joined her, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice raw with emotion. "You saved me," he said, his hand brushing against hers. "You saved this company." Rachel turned to him, her heart full. "No," she said softly. "We saved each other." Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Rachel's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "I was going to wait," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Wait for the right time, the perfect moment. But standing here now, after everything we faced together, I realize there is no such thing as perfect. There is only now, only us." Rachel's eyes filled with tears as he knelt before her, his voice shaking slightly. "Rachel Carter, will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Rachel laughed, a soft, disbelieving sound full of joy and wonder. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Noah, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger, standing to pull her into his arms. The city stretched out before them, glittering and alive, a testament to second chances and new beginnings. They stood together, not as CEO and employee, not as survivor and savior, but simply as two souls who had found in each other the courage to believe in a future worth fighting for.